If you follow professional sports in any capacity, you've probably come to the terms with the likelihood of an injury happening to a player at some point in their careers. Torn ligaments, fractures, concussions, and broken bones are all horrible yet unsurprising incidents that are just a part of living the sort of life that a professional athlete requires. However, there's one particular injury that not only confused myself, fans, and professionals for an extended period of almost 2 years, but also rendered the number one pick of that year's draft incapable of performing the simple and fundamental act of shooting a basketball. After enduring years of strategic losses with the aim of constructing a championship-caliber team, the Philadelphia 76ers traded up 2 spots in the 2017 NBA draft to specifically secure Markelle Fultz. He was envisioned as a versatile asset who could complement all-star teammates Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons immediately. Although rather than making an impactful contribution as anticipated, Fultz encountered an unforeseen medical issue that derailed expectations almost right away. On September 27th of 2017, a Twitter video surfaced of Fultz taking a free throw during a 76ers practice run. It seemed that he had not only adjusted his form to have a lower release point, but it also seemed to be considerably slower and so much more awkward than before. It was so awkward, in fact, that the media had asked then-current 76ers head coach Brett Brown about it the following day, to which he said something general about Markelle wanting to make improvements to his game and was working with a personal trainer to get things done. And while this may be true, it was a bit of a strange response given that Fultz at the time was seemingly healthy, and changing something as fundamental as a jump shot or a free throw just weeks before the season seemed a little bit unnecessary and needless. And this weirdness continued. Subsequent reports followed of Fultz unable to lift his arms to the point of having to have fluid drained from them, to having a cortisone shot put into his shoulder to alleviate pain, being ruled out indefinitely due to scapular imbalance, and being diagnosed after that to having scapular dyskinesis and having to essentially relearn basketball, to finally on December 3rd of 2018 being officially diagnosed with neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome. Thoracic simply refers to the thorax or chest region of your body. If you look at the thoracic portion of your spine, it starts with a T1 vertebra around your rear delts, all the way down to your T12, which is at the level of your diaphragm. Outlet is simply an exit or escape point, and in this case, in the thoracic region, sometimes referred to as a thoracic inlet or superior thoracic aperture. And then syndrome, which are a collection of symptoms that typically manifest together consistently in the body. Now, when we talk about thoracic outlet syndrome, we refer to this upper chest and shoulder area, specifically looking at a few parts that go straight through this outlet region. Depending on what gets compressed or pinched, we can determine what type of TOS diagnosis we can assign to it, and because Markelle Fultz had issues with his nerves, we know that he was dealing with the neurogenic variety. This bundle of nerves that you see here that goes out and under the clavicle bone is called the brachial plexus. It stems from the nerve roots located in the neck and creates a network that then connects to the rest of the nerves in the arm. But of course, it's not a simple A to B type situation, and because the body is a complex mix of bone, muscle, tissue, and nerves, all intertwined with one another, there can be some complications with nerve compression that can happen just based on the areas that this bundle passes through, simply because there isn't enough space. And even that is an understatement. Because the brachial plexus connects nerves from the neck to the arms, it passes in between the anterior and middle scalene muscles right above your first rib, in a region known as the interscalene or scalene triangle. After passing through the adjacent scalene muscles, the brachial plexus then traverses through the costoclavicular junction, which is just beneath the clavicle bone and over the first rib, creating additional potential sites for impingement. And then finally, moving towards the front of the shoulder but before the upper arm, the blood vessels and brachial plexus nerves must pass through this guy here, the pectoralis minor muscle. This here is a relatively small muscle that lies deep in the much larger pectoralis major muscle in the front of the upper chest that you and I are familiar with. The nerves and the blood vessels pass underneath the pectoralis minor tendon through a relatively tight subpectoralis space before reaching the upper arm. Given the array of symptoms typically associated with thoracic outlet syndrome, it's hardly surprising at all that Fultz struggled with shooting a basketball. But what even caused this? Despite the numerous potential sites for nerve compression in the shoulder area, neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome was a relatively improbable diagnosis for Markelle Fultz, affecting approximately 1 in every 40,000 individuals. However, on November 13th of 2018, It was reported that Fultz had sustained a motorcycle injury back in 2017, an incident that aligns with the type of trauma that could result in nerve impingement and subsequent shoulder mechanic issues. And given that he had suffered the most confusing start to an NBA career that I've ever heard of, Fultz is now doing relatively great, all things considered, now playing as a solid contributing guard for the Orlando Magic and having his shooting mechanics come back to form.